Today I will show you an adventure sci-fi thriller film from 2020 titled Voyagers. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The Earth is dying. Scientists look for a new planet able to sustain human life and find it in the year 2063. The planet is seen on screen, while a woman explains that it is a planet humans can colonize. She continues, saying that a scouting mission to the planet should be sent, since the voyage there will take 86 years. The crew of the mission will reproduce on the ship, making the third generation on board the one to reach the planet. The crew is genetically engineered on Earth by combining the genes of leading scientists. A man is seen talking about the reasoning behind this plan, justifying why the crew will be specifically engineered to man the mission, consisting of children raised and trained solely for its purpose. The next step is assessing when they'll be ready to go. The younger the crew is, the longer the resources can be preserved. But the man, Richard, is worried that they might not be fully equipped to deal with the complexity of space travel on their own. Later, Richard is seen entering a facility where the child crew is being raised and he gets into full protective gear. He enters the rooms where they live and when they see him they all rejoice. Richard monitors where they are in their education, and then tucks Christopher, Sella and Zach into bed. Zach tells him that he's afraid, but Richard comforts him by telling him that he's safe. The next day, Richard is talking to a woman in charge of the mission. He tells her that he should go with the children to raise and protect them. Richard's addition to the mission would also mean that it will be able to launch in 4 years, instead of 7. Next, the mission launches with Richard on the helm. The shuttle docks with Humanitas, the ship for the mission. They all go inside and find their quarters. Richard takes one last look of Earth. 10 years later, the children are already adults, as they can be seen waking and getting ready to start their days on the ship. The first lesson covers the fertilization for the second generation, which will begin in the 24th year of their lives. The crew goes about their day like robots. They're seen drinking a blue liquid. Christopher and Zach are listening to classical music. Sella walks through the ship and looks out at the space around them. Later, she talks to Richard, saying that the lives of the crew are unimportant. Trying to comfort her, he shows her pictures of his grandparents, telling her that providing for the future is very important. That night, Christopher can't sleep. He listens to the sounds of the ship. The next day, Richard and Christopher are in the hydroponics bay checking the state of the plants, when a message about toxicity in the water appears on Christopher's screen. He asks Richard about it, thinking it's some kind of chemical that isn't being processed from their urine. But Richard dismisses his concerns. He's skeptical about it. So, later, he asks Zach about the ingredient T56J. They wonder why the information is unavailable. During the night, the two of them go back to figure out what it is. Christopher bypasses the firewall and is able to find the information. The chemical ingredient is found in the blue liquid they drink. Zach thinks it was a digestion aid, but they figure out that it has other effects on their personality. It makes them dull and docile, decreasing their desires and pleasure responses. They're being drugged and pacified, so they don't reproduce naturally and overpopulate the ship. The two of them stop drinking the blue liquid. Later, they share the information with Kai and Julie, along with the information about a hidden compartment on the ship. Later, Christopher is in a session with Richard. He says he knows that he's been lying to them, but only mentions the unmarked compartment. Pod 23. Richard tells him that the mission must have lied to them for a reason, that the pod might be for the third generation. After the session, Richard sends a message back to Earth asking if he could share everything with the crew and be honest with them, so they don't lose faith in him. The message will take time to get there. The next day, while standing in line next to Sella, Christopher has a fantasy about her. They eat lunch and he keeps looking at her, but Zach approaches her telling her that she's changed. Richard comes in and tells him not to grab her, as per the rules. In the gym, Christopher and Zach are seen fighting and taking it a bit too far. The others don't understand what's happening. The two of them start feeling the effects of not taking the drug. They hear the ship noises and go to an observation room where they see one of their fellow crew members. The three of them talk about what it might be. So he tells them that he thinks it might be some kind of alien life form. Sella and Richard are in his office and he shows her dried plants from Earth. Zach and Christopher hear them talking and approach the room. Zach sees Richard touching Sella's shoulder and gets jealous. They lose contact with Earth and Richard informs them that their transmitter needs to be fixed. Zach will come with him, while the others continue with their roles. The preparations are underway. As Zach sees Sella and approaches her again, she tells him about the suit he'll be wearing and he starts touching her inappropriately. Richard runs in and gets him off of her. He asks Zach what's happening, but he runs away, looking for him. Richard sees Phoebe on the way and she tells him that he stopped taking the blue. Next, he runs into Christopher and finds out that he stopped taking the drug as well. They argue, but Richard tells him that the drug was implemented to stop precisely the type of behavior witnessed in Zach. He asks Christopher to help him fix the transmitter, so that when it's online he'll back him up when he voices his objections to mission control. All of the other crew members are on their positions in the ship, while prep for the spacewalk is underway. Zach enters the systems room. Richard and Christopher go outside the ship. Christopher is experiencing sensations he hasn't felt before, so Richard keeps an eye on him. Richard repairs one of the transmitter parts, then goes over the second one. Inside the ship, the noises from the ship can be heard again and the crew is getting restless. They check to see if anything else is outside and suddenly something appears on the screen next to Richard and Christopher. It hurts Richard, hurling him away from the ship. The ship has some kind of malfunction as well. No one knows what has happened. There is a fire in the systems room. Christopher brings Richard inside and they take him to medical. All kinds of errors appear on the ship, from navigation to communication. The medical team and Sella are trying to resuscitate Richard, but it doesn't work. Sella is the chief medical officer and pronounces him dead. Later, the crew has a meeting, where they speak about what has happened. They mention the creaking sound. One of the crew members says he saw something on the monitor when it happened. That looked like a force jumping into Richard, like it was something alien. Phoebe starts crying. Christopher comforts them, saying that if they keep it together they'll be alright. The systems reboot and the crew is checking the surveillance archive, but all of the footage has been deleted by the fire in the systems room. They need to choose a new chief officer. Zach says that he should be chief, but the others say that they need an election. All of them vote and place Christopher as chief officer. Zach is jealous, but congratulates him regardless. First order of business is repairing the damage in the transmitter. He gets the entire crew working on the other repairs on the ship caused by the fire. The surveillance system is the last thing on the repair list, so they can see what happened to Richard. They hope the drives are intact. Sella goes to his office and looks through his pictures and videos. When Christopher arrives at the door, she tells him that she is supposed to destroy his personal archive, even though she doesn't want to do it. She shows him Richard's photographs and they talk about the importance of parents. He asks why Richard told her about his life, thinking that they might have been more than friends. But she explains that he was just feeling alone. They look through his video diary, where he explains how much he believes in the mission and talks about how much he cares for them. Christopher is looking for the crew and finds them in the cantina, angry that they're not at their posts. Zach tells him that they're repairing the refrigerators, so they don't lose any food. But there's a bunch of food that might go bad, so he asks him as they can have a feast to celebrate their new chief officer. After they eat, Kai tells the others not to drink the blue and they all dump it. Sella and Christopher are looking through Richard's videos laughing and enjoying themselves. Christopher feels increasingly more attracted to her. Zach feels attracted to Julie. He touches her and she touches him back. The others are looking at them. Later, the crew can be seen play fighting and running around the ship, having fun. They all look through Richard's personal archive. Sella finds them in his quarters and tells them to leave. But they don't want to. Zack is the last to leave, telling Sella that Richard isn't there anymore to protect her. She goes back to the med bay and grabs a scalpel. Christopher is following Zack, worried he might do something to Sella. When he finds out that she's in the med bay and goes there before Zack can, Zack arrives and Christopher pretends that the two of them are making love. So he leaves. Sella threatens him with the scalpel, not understanding his intentions. But when he says he's there to help her,